I still remember the exact moment I thought I'd finally made it. The boardroom lights bounced off the polished mahogany table as I stood there, 28 years old, and trembling slightly in my carefully chosen outfit that had taken 3 credit card payments to afford. And that's why June's marketing strategy increased our Q3 engagement by 42%. Elaine said, her voice carrying that signature confidence that made everyone lean forward when she spoke. The Harrington account wouldn't have signed without her insights. I felt my cheeks flush as 14 pairs of eyes turned to me. Oscar, our CEO, actually nodded. Not the perfunctory movement he gave most presentations, but a real acknowledgement. I'd spent 3 sleepless weeks building that strategy, testing every assumption, anticipating every objection. Thank you, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. The data suggested we needed to pivot from traditional demographics to behavioral targeting, and she executed flawlessly. Elaine cut in smoothly, placing her hand on my shoulder. I knew she would. That touch felt like a benediction. Elaine May, the woman who'd climbed from marketing director to COO in 5 years, who wore power like a second skin, whose approval I'd been chasing since I joined the company, was publicly claiming me as her protege. After the meeting, she caught me by the coffee machine, her tailored blazer somehow unwrinkled after a 3-hour session. Drinks tonight? We should celebrate your win, she said, already typing something into her phone. I'd love that, I replied, trying not to sound too eager. 8 o'clock, Vantage Lounge. Wear something that makes you feel unstoppable. She smiled, that rare full smile that transformed her usually calculating face into something almost warm. I spent the afternoon in a haze of validation, fielding congratulatory emails, and trying not to check the time every 5 minutes. Ryder from the creative team stopped by my desk, leaning against it with his usual easy posture. Quite the victory lap in there, he said, his voice carrying a note I couldn't quite place. Elaine doesn't share the spotlight often. I worked really hard on this one, I said, straightening papers that didn't need straightening. I'm sure you did. He paused. Just be careful, okay? I laughed it off. Of what? Success. He just shrugged and walked away, leaving me slightly unsettled until I dismissed it as jealousy. Ryder had been at the company longer than me, but hadn't risen as quickly. At 7:30, I was already in an Uber heading to Vantage, wearing the one designer dress I owned, a splurge after my first promotion. The city lights blurred past as I mentally rehearsed casual, clever things to say when Elaine inevitably introduced me to whatever power players would be at her table. My phone buzzed with a text from Peyton. Get it, girl, but remember who you are. I smiled. Peyton had been my roommate since college and had watched me transform from a nervous marketing assistant to whatever I was becoming. She worried I was changing too much, too fast. Maybe she was right. But tonight wasn't the night for self-doubt. The lounge was exactly as exclusive as its reputation suggested. All dark wood, amber lighting, and people who looked like they belonged in magazines. I gave Elaine's name at the door and was led to a corner table where she sat alone, 2 martinis already waiting. Right on time, she said, raising her glass. To your first of many victories. The gin burned pleasantly as we clinked glasses. Thank you for the opportunity, I said, and for the mentorship. I wouldn't be here without you. Talent recognizes talent, she replied, her eyes assessing me in that way that always made me feel both seen and examined. You remind me of myself 10 years ago, hungry, smart, willing to do what others won't. Pride bloomed in my chest. This was everything I'd wanted since I'd watched her demolish a boardroom of doubting executives my first week. To be seen by her as an equal in the making, not just another disposable team member. I have something for you, she said, sliding a small velvet box across the table. Inside was a sleek silver pen, heavy and expensive feeling. Engraved along the side, ambition is the path to success. It's beautiful, I said, genuinely touched. Use it to sign your next promotion paperwork. She winked. Which reminds me, I sent you an email with some thoughts on the Westridge proposal. Nothing urgent, just review it this weekend. I nodded, already making mental notes to cancel my Saturday plans with Peyton. Later that night, unable to sleep from the lingering excitement, I opened my laptop to get ahead on the Westridge work. Elaine's email sat at the top of my inbox, but it wasn't addressed to me. I was CC'd. The actual recipient was Oscar. Oscar, as discussed, I've developed a comprehensive strategy for Westridge. June has been helping with some of the data collection, but the core approach and execution plan are mine. I've CC'd her so she can begin implementing the support materials we'll need. With this account, I believe we're looking at not just a VP position opening, but a board seat as well. My hands went cold. The strategy she presented today, my strategy, was apparently just the beginning. The Westridge proposal she'd asked me to review was already being positioned as hers. The martini churned in my stomach as I scrolled down to see my weeks of work attached to her email. My name nowhere to be found, except as an implementation assistant. The silver pen suddenly felt like a consolation prize for a theft in progress. I stared at the email until my eyes burned, reading it over and over, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. Sleep was impossible. I paced my apartment, the dress I'd been so proud of earlier now twisted around my waist, my makeup smeared from rubbing my eyes. The silver pen sat on my counter, catching the light every time I passed. Ambition is the path to success. Apparently, so is theft. By morning, shock had hardened into something sharper. I showered, dressed, and arrived at the office an hour early, needing to see what else Elaine had taken from me. The office was quiet, just the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional early bird tapping away in a distant cubicle. I logged into the shared drive, where our team kept project files, and began digging through folders I hadn't opened in months. The Carrington campaign from last quarter, the one where Elaine had praised my supporting work during the client presentation. There it was, my original deck, complete with my notes and research, saved under a new file name, with Elaine listed as the author. The Blackwell proposal that had won us agency innovation recognition. My draft had been polished into Elaine's voice. My market analysis copied wholesale. Even the intern training program I'd developed after noticing our high turnover, rebranded as Elaine's Leadership Initiative. You're in early. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Ryder stood in the doorway of the conference room I'd commandeered, 2 coffee cups in hand. Just catching up on some things, I said, quickly minimizing the screen. He set one of the coffees beside me. Looked like you were hunting for something. I hesitated. Ryder and I were friendly, but office politics made real friendships complicated. Still, his warning yesterday suddenly seemed less like jealousy and more like he'd been trying to tell me something. Can I ask you something weird? I said, accepting the coffee. The Blackwell proposal last spring. Who do you think created it? His eyebrows rose slightly. The one Elaine presented to the board? Yeah. Well, you did most of it, right? I remember you asking me for input on the creative direction. He leaned against the door frame. Why? I took a deep breath. Because Elaine's been taking credit for my work, not just tweaking or supervising, flat out claiming it as hers. Saying it out loud made it real, in a way that churned my stomach. Ryder's expression shifted from surprise to something darker. Show me, he said, closing the door behind him. I pulled up the files, the emails, the presentations. With each example, his jaw tightened. This isn't new for her, he finally said. 2 years ago, it was Lana from product development. Before that, some guy who eventually quit. Elaine finds promising people, mentors them, just enough to extract their best ideas, then discards them when they start asking questions. Why doesn't anyone stop her? Oscar thinks she walks on water. The board sees results. And who's going to believe a junior employee over a COO? He shook his head. I tried to warn Lana. She confronted Elaine directly and ended up transferred to the Cleveland office. My phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Staff meeting in 30 minutes, with Elaine presenting the Westridge strategy. I can't just let her take credit for Westridge, I said, my voice tight. That's months of my work, my research, my ideas. What are you going to do? Stand up in the meeting and call her a thief? Ryder's voice was gentle but firm. You need to be smarter than that. He was right. A direct confrontation would be career suicide. I needed evidence, allies, a plan. But I also couldn't sit through another meeting, watching Elaine build her empire on my foundation. I need to buy some time, I said, more to myself than to Ryder. The staff meeting was already filling up when I arrived. Elaine stood at the front, arranging presentation materials, looking immaculate as always, in a crisp white blouse and charcoal pencil skirt. She caught my eye and smiled. That same mentor's smile that had once made me feel chosen. Now it made me feel hunted. June, perfect timing, she called. I was hoping you could help distribute these before we start. She handed me a stack of presentation folders, my Westridge strategy, repackaged with her name on the cover. Our fingers brushed during the handoff, and I had to fight the urge to recoil. Actually, I said, my heart hammering, I'm not feeling well. Might be food poisoning from last night. I pressed a hand to my stomach for effect. I need to go home. Concern flashed across her face. Perfectly calibrated, utterly false. Oh no, was it something at Vantage? Must have been, I replied, matching her performance. I hate to miss this, but, of course, health comes first. We'll catch you up tomorrow. She turned to the room. Can someone make sure June gets home okay? Ryder volunteered, earning a dismissive nod from Elaine. As he guided me out, I felt her eyes on my back, calculating, assessing the threat. In the elevator, Ryder spoke low and fast. You know she's going to present your strategy as her own today, right? By tomorrow, it'll be official company record. I know, I said, clutching my bag where I'd slipped one of the presentation folders. But now I have time to figure out how to fight back. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped out, with one certainty burning through the fog of betrayal. Elaine had taught me, ambition was the path to success. She'd forgotten to mention it was also the path to enemies. Ryder walked me to my car, both of us maintaining the sick day charade, until we were safely in the parking garage. What's your next move? He asked, leaning against a concrete pillar. I pulled out the stolen presentation folder. First, I need to understand exactly what she changed and what she kept. Then, I need to find proof that the original work was mine. And then, I hesitated. The then part was still a blur of rage and half-formed ideas. I don't know yet, but I'm not letting her get away with this. Ryder shifted uncomfortably. Look, I want to help, but I need to be careful too. I've got rent and student loans, and I'm not asking you to risk your job, I said quickly. Just keep your eyes open. Let me know if you hear anything useful. He nodded, relief visible in the loosening of his shoulders. I can do that. At home, I spread the contents of the folder across my kitchen table. The presentation was almost entirely my work, my market analysis, my strategy framework, even my phrasing in some places. Elaine had added an executive summary and reworked the conclusion to emphasize her visionary leadership. I pulled out my laptop and began documenting everything, creating a side-by-side comparison of my original work and Elaine's version. The similarities were undeniable to anyone who looked closely. The problem was getting someone to look. My phone rang. Peyton. Weren't we supposed to meet for lunch? She asked when I answered. God, I'm sorry, I said, suddenly remembering our plans. Something happened at work. Bad enough to ghost your best friend? Elaine's been stealing my work, I blurted out. Everything I've done for the past year, she's been taking credit for all of it. Silence on the line, then. I'm coming over, and I'm bringing wine. 30 minutes later, Peyton sat across from me, examining my evidence while I paced the apartment. This is seriously messed up, she said, flipping through the documents. Have you talked to HR? I laughed bitterly. HR reports to Elaine. Besides, it would be her word against mine. and she's been laying groundwork for months, positioning herself as my mentor, making it seem like she's been guiding my work. What about this Oscar guy, the CEO? He thinks Elaine is his golden goose. The company's stock has risen 30% since she became COO. I collapsed onto the couch. I need irrefutable proof that the work was mine before I go to anyone. Peyton topped off my wine glass. What about your emails, your drafts? There must be a digital trail. I've been working on the company's servers, saving everything to shared drives so Elaine could review my progress. I made air quotes with my fingers, but I might have some early drafts on my personal laptop. I dug out my old laptop, the one I'd used before getting a company computer. It took forever to boot up, but eventually I found what I was looking for: preliminary notes and drafts for several projects, including Westridge, all with metadata showing they were created months before Elaine's versions. This is good, Peyton said, but is it enough? Couldn't she just say you were doing preliminary work under her direction? She was right. I needed something more definitive, something that proved Elaine knew exactly what she was doing. I need to get into her email, I said, the idea forming as I spoke. Peyton's eyes widened. Whoa, that's crossing into illegal territory. Not if I already have access. I explained how Elaine had given me her password months ago to handle some scheduling while she was on vacation. She probably changed it, but she uses variations of the same password for everything. June, think about what you're saying. If you get caught, if I do nothing, I lose everything I've worked for. My voice cracked. You don't understand what it's like there. I clawed my way into this position from nothing. No fancy degree, no family connections, just hard work and talent. If I let Elaine take that from me— Peyton reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I do understand. I've watched you work yourself to exhaustion for this job, but I don't want to see you destroy yourself trying to fix this. I pulled my hand away, suddenly irritated by her caution. So I should just give up? Let her win? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying be strategic. Don't let anger push you into making mistakes. She was right, of course. Breaking into Elaine's email would be a desperate move, possibly a career-ending one if caught. I needed a better plan. What if, I said slowly, instead of exposing her all at once, I start by protecting my current work, create a paper trail she can't erase. The next morning, I returned to the office with a clear head and a strategy. I sent myself emails, documenting my work on ongoing projects, blind copied to my personal account. I started keeping a detailed work journal, and I scheduled a casual coffee with Lana from product development, the previous victim Ryder had mentioned. As I waited in the cafe across from our building, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I heard you're asking questions about Elaine. Check the shared drive. Folder, Board Presentations 2022. Subfolder, Strategy Retreat. Password, Ambition 2022. Be careful who you trust. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. I stared at the message, my coffee cooling in front of me. Someone else knew what Elaine was doing. Someone wanted to help, or someone was setting a trap. Lana arrived 15 minutes late, her brisk walk and tense shoulders suggesting she'd second-guessed this meeting several times before showing up. She ordered a black coffee and sat across from me, her eyes darting around the cafe as if expecting to see Elaine lurking behind a potted plant. I can't stay long, she said, not quite meeting my gaze. Thanks for coming. I kept my voice casual, though my heart was racing. I wanted to ask your advice on managing cross-departmental projects. Lana's smile was tight. Cut the bullshit, June. Ryder told me what you're really asking about. I blinked, caught off guard by her directness. He shouldn't have. No, he should have. She leaned forward. Because I wish someone had warned me about Elaine before she derailed my career. For the next 20 minutes, Lana detailed her own experience, how Elaine had mentored her, praised her publicly, then systematically claimed credit for her innovations. When Lana confronted her, Elaine turned ice cold. She told Oscar I was having emotional problems. that I was trying to take credit for her work because I was jealous of her success. Lana's voice was flat, drained of emotion through repeated tellings. 2 weeks later, I was transferred to Cleveland. The official reason was operational needs. But everyone knew. Why did you come back? I asked. Because Cleveland was a dead end, and I refused to let her win. Lana's eyes finally met mine, hard with determination. I worked my ass off, made connections with board members, and got transferred back when a position opened. Elaine couldn't block it without raising questions. And now we maintain a professional distance. She knows I know, and I know she's waiting for me to make a mistake. Lana checked her watch, which is why this meeting needs to end. Being seen with you right now wouldn't be good for either of us. As she stood to leave, I blurted out, "Did you send me a text about the strategy retreat folder?" Confusion flickered across her face. What text? Either she was lying, or someone else was involved. Before I could decide which, Lana placed a hand on my shoulder. "Whatever you're planning, be careful. Elaine doesn't just fight back, she scorches the earth." With that, she was gone, leaving me with a cold coffee and a colder realization of what I was up against. Back at my desk, I waited until the office cleared for lunch before accessing the shared drive. The folder was buried deep in the archives, and when I entered the password, Ambition 2022, a collection of files appeared. What I found made my stomach drop. Presentations, strategies, market analyses, all created by different employees over the years, all later presented as Elaine's work. My name appeared in several recent documents, but so did Lana's from years ago, and at least 3 other employees I didn't recognize. This wasn't opportunistic theft. This was systematic. Elaine had been doing this for years, building her career on stolen work, discarding people when they became inconvenient. I was so absorbed that I didn't notice someone approaching until a shadow fell across my screen. Finding anything interesting, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Oscar, the CEO, stood behind me, his expression unreadable. I was just researching past strategies for the Miller account," I stammered, quickly closing the window. "In archived board presentations from 2 years ago?" His eyebrow arched. "I wanted to understand the company's strategic evolution," I said, the lie sounding weak even to my ears. Oscar studied me for a long moment. "My office, 5 minutes." He walked away before I could respond. My hands shook as I gathered my notes. Had Elaine told him I was asking questions? Was this the beginning of my own transfer to corporate Siberia? Oscar's office occupied the corner of our floor. Glass walls offering a panoramic view of the city. He gestured for me to sit while he remained standing, looking out at the skyline. "Elaine tells me you're one of our most promising talents," he said without turning. "Says you've contributed significantly to several major accounts." "Contributed," I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. Now he turned, his expression shrewd. "You disagree with the characterization." It was the opening I needed, but fear closed my throat. This man could end my career with a phone call, yet staying silent meant accepting defeat. "I don't just contribute, Oscar, I create. The Westridge strategy, mine. Harrington, mine. The new engagement metrics we're using, also mine." The words tumbled out, fueled by weeks of suppressed anger. Elaine has been taking credit for my work since I joined her team. I expected denial, dismissal, maybe even anger. Instead, Oscar sighed and sat down heavily. "I was afraid of this," he said quietly. "It's happening again." My breath caught. "You know, I've had concerns about Elaine's management style for some time, but she delivers results, and accusations without proof are just office politics." He fixed me with a penetrating stare. "Do you have proof, June?" I thought of the anonymous text, the hidden folder, my original drafts. "I'm gathering it," I said carefully. "Then I suggest you gather quickly. The board is considering Elaine for a promotion to president next month. If what you're saying is true, I need to know before that decision is made. Hope flared briefly, then flickered as suspicion crept in. Why was he so willing to listen? Was this a trap to see if I'd speak against Elaine? Why tell me this? I asked. Because I built this company from nothing, and I won't have its culture corrupted by theft and fear. He leaned forward. But understand this, if you're wrong, or if you can't prove your claims, I won't be able to protect you. As I left his office, my phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. Oscar isn't the ally you think he is. He and Elaine go way back. Be careful what you share. Check her calendar for March 15th. Then look at the company's SEC filings from the same day. The truth goes deeper than stolen presentations. I froze in the hallway, my mind racing. What was on March 15th? And who was sending these texts? The game had just changed, and I wasn't sure if I was the player or the pawn. I barely slept that night, my mind spinning with contradictions. Oscar seemed willing to hear me out, but the text warned he wasn't trustworthy. Elaine was stealing my work, but she'd also championed me publicly. Nothing made sense, and everyone had an agenda I couldn't quite grasp. By morning, I'd made a decision. Trust no one. Verify everything. I arrived at the office early and immediately checked Elaine's calendar for March 15th. Most executives' calendars were visible to their teams for scheduling purposes, though the details of private meetings were often hidden. March 15th showed a 4-hour block marked simply OS Strategy Meeting at a downtown hotel, not the office. No attendees listed, no agenda attached. The company's SEC filings were public record. I pulled them up on my phone, scrolling through dense financial documents until I found what I was looking for, a significant stock sale by both Oscar and Elaine on March 16th, the day after their mysterious meeting. They'd each sold shares worth over $1 million. A week later, our company announced disappointing quarterly results, and the stock dropped 20%. They had sold right before a major downturn. That timing wasn't just convenient. It could be illegal. I was so absorbed in this discovery that I didn't notice Peyton calling until the third attempt. "Where are you?" she demanded when I answered. "I've been waiting at the restaurant for 20 minutes. Shit, I'm sorry. I'd completely forgotten our dinner plans. Something came up at work. Something always comes up at work lately." Her voice carried an edge I wasn't used to hearing. "This is the third time you've bailed on me in 2 weeks?" "I know. I'm sorry. It's just Elaine." "I know." Peyton sighed. "June, I'm worried about you. This vendetta is consuming you." "It's not a vendetta," I snapped. "She's stealing my work, my future. And now I've found something even worse." "What could be worse than her taking credit for your work?" I hesitated, suddenly aware that I was in the office, surrounded by potential ears. "I can't talk about it right now. I'll come over tonight and explain everything." "Don't bother," Peyton said, her voice flat. "I'm going out with other friends who actually show up when they say they will." The call ended before I could respond. I sat there, phone in hand, a hollow feeling spreading through my chest. Peyton had been my rock since college, the one person I could always count on. Now she was pulling away, and I couldn't blame her. But I couldn't stop either, not when I was finally getting close to the truth. I spent the rest of the day gathering more evidence, carefully documenting the timeline of Elaine's theft and the suspicious stock sales. By evening I had a solid case, not just of plagiarism, but potentially insider trading. As I was preparing to leave, Ryder appeared at my desk. "You missed the department meeting," he said quietly. "I was following up on something important." "What did I miss?" "Elaine announced she's recommending you for promotion to senior manager." I froze. "What?" "She sang your praises for 15 minutes, talked about your contributions to Westridge, and how you're being groomed for leadership." His eyes narrowed. It was quite the performance. My mind raced. A promotion would mean more money, more responsibility, more visibility. It would also make me look ungrateful if I accused her now. "She knows," I whispered. "She knows I'm on to her, and she's trying to buy my silence. Or set you up for a bigger fall," Ryder suggested. Promote you, integrate you further into her schemes, make you complicit. The elevator dinged, and Elaine stepped out, spotting us immediately. Her smile was warm as she approached, but her eyes were calculating. June, just the person I wanted to see. She placed a hand on my shoulder. I hope you don't mind. I made the announcement without you there. I wanted it to be a surprise. It certainly was, I managed, my face carefully neutral. We should discuss your new responsibilities over dinner. Are you free tomorrow night? Her tone made it clear this wasn't really a question. Actually, I have plans with Peyton tomorrow. The lie came easily. But I could do Friday. Perfect. The Capitol Grill at 7. She squeezed my shoulder. I'm so proud of how far you've come under my guidance. Every word was a dagger, but I smiled through it. I couldn't have done it without you. After she left, Ryder whistled low. You should consider acting as a backup career. That was impressive. I learned from the best, I said bitterly. Listen, I need to tell you something, but not here. We walked to a coffee shop 3 blocks away, far enough from the office to be safe. There, I laid out everything I'd discovered. The systematic theft, the suspicious stock sales, Oscar's ambiguous position. Ryder's face grew increasingly grave. June, this is way bigger than office politics. If they're trading on inside information, that's federal territory. I know, that's why I need to be absolutely certain before I do anything. What's your next move? I took a deep breath. I need to access Elaine's emails from March. I need to know what was in that meeting and who else might be involved. That's risky as hell. So is doing nothing. I met his eyes. Will you help me? He hesitated, conflict clear on his face. What exactly would helping entail? I need a distraction, something that will keep Elaine out of her office for at least 15 minutes while I check her computer. The weight of what I was asking hung between us. This wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. This was potentially criminal activity on both sides. If we get caught, he began. I know, but if we don't try, they win. Again. Ryder was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Friday, during your dinner, I'll create a system emergency that needs her immediate attention. You'll have 15 minutes, max. As we parted ways, my phone buzzed with a text from Peyton. I'm still mad at you, but I love you. Whatever you're doing, please be careful. Some things aren't worth the cost. I stared at the message, wondering if she was right. Then I thought of Elaine's smug face, announcing my promotion. A promotion built on my stolen work. And my resolve hardened. Some things were worth any cost. Friday arrived with the weight of inevitability. I spent the day in a state of hyper-awareness, noting every glance, every conversation around me. The office felt like a minefield. One wrong step, and everything would explode. Elaine was in meetings most of the day, which gave me time to prepare. I rehearsed what I would look for on her computer, how quickly I could search her emails, what keywords might yield results fastest. At 6:30, I left to meet her at the restaurant, my stomach in knots. The Capitol Grill was exactly the kind of place Elaine loved. Expensive, exclusive, the kind of establishment where deals were made over rare steaks and $100 bottles of wine. She was already there when I arrived, nursing a martini at a corner table with a perfect view of the room. Power positioning, another one of her tactics. June, she smiled, rising slightly as I approached. You look lovely. Thank you, I said, smoothing the dress I'd chosen carefully. Professional but confident, armor for the battle ahead. We ordered drinks, made small talk about the weather, the restaurant, inconsequential office gossip. All the while I watched the minutes tick by on my watch, knowing Ryder would be positioning himself for our plan. So, Elaine said finally, leaning forward, let's talk about your future. Senior manager is just the beginning. I see a director role for you within 2 years, VP within 5. The path she described was exactly what I dreamed of when I joined the company. Now it felt tainted, built on theft and lies. That's very generous, I said carefully. I'm curious though, what exactly impressed you about my work on Westridge? A flicker of something, caution, perhaps, crossed her face before her smile returned. Your analytical approach, of course. The way you identified behavioral patterns, the competition missed. Interesting. That was actually based on research I did back in February, before you were even involved in the project. Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. We all build on each other's ideas, June. That's how good teams function. I hope you're not suggesting otherwise. Before I could respond, her phone rang. She glanced at it, frowned, and answered. This better be important. What? No, that's not possible. Her voice sharpened. I'll be right there. She hung up, already gathering her things. System crash at the office. The Westridge presentation is corrupted, and we need it for the morning meeting. She threw cash on the table. Rain check on dinner. We'll continue this conversation Monday. As she rushed out, I felt a surge of both relief and anxiety. Ryder had come through. Now it was my turn. I waited 5 minutes, then took a cab back to the office. The security guard waved me through. I was a familiar face, and plenty of people worked late on Fridays. The executive floor was deserted, except for the sound of raised voices coming from the IT department down the hall. Elaine's office was unlocked. She'd left in too much of a hurry to secure it. I slipped inside, heart pounding so loudly I was sure someone would hear it. Her computer was still on, the screensaver swirling colors across the monitor. I moved the mouse, and her desktop appeared. No password prompt. Another stroke of luck. She must have disabled the automatic lock when she stepped away. I went straight to her email, searching for March 15th. There it was, a calendar invitation from Oscar for the OS strategy meeting, with a note, usual place, bring the Q1 projections, private conversation. Attached was a document labeled Q1 Actual Vise G Projected.xlsx. I opened it and found 2 sets of numbers, the public projections shared with investors and the actual internal forecasts, which were significantly worse. They had known the company would miss its targets weeks before the public announcement. They had sold their shares based on that knowledge. Textbook insider trading. I forwarded the email to my personal account, then searched for any mention of my name. Dozens of results appeared. I clicked on the most recent, from yesterday. Oscar, June is getting too close to the Westridge situation. I'm promoting her to keep her loyal and distracted. If that doesn't work, we may need to consider a restructuring that moves her elsewhere. She's smart, but ultimately replaceable. Let's discuss options at our next meeting. My hands shook as I forwarded that email too. Then I heard it. Footsteps approaching the office. I quickly closed everything, slipped behind the door, and held my breath. The door opened, and Lana walked in, her eyes scanning the room before landing on me. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed. "I could ask you the same thing," I whispered back. She closed the door behind her. "I'm the one who texted you, you idiot. I've been trying to build a case against Elaine for months." I stared at her, processing this revelation. "Why didn't you just tell me?" "Because I needed to know if you were serious or just complaining." She glanced nervously at the door. "Did you find anything?" "Insider trading, Oscar and Elaine both, and proof she's been stealing my work." Lana's eyes widened. "We need to go, now. Ryder can't keep her distracted much longer." We slipped out of the office and took the stairs instead of the elevator, emerging on a lower floor where we wouldn't run into Elaine. My heart was still racing, adrenaline making my hands shake. "What happens now?" I asked as we reached the lobby. "Now we take what we have to the board, specifically to Diana, the chairwoman. She's the only one not in Oscar's pocket." Lana's voice was steady, determined. "But we need to move fast. If Elaine suspects anything—" "She already does," I interrupted, showing her the email about my promotion. "She knows I'm on to her." Lana's face paled. "Then we have no time to waste. The board meets Monday morning. We present our evidence then, or not at all. As we parted ways outside the building, my phone buzzed with a text from Elaine. System issue resolved. Strange that you left the restaurant without paying your share. Even stranger that security reports you entered the building 10 minutes after I arrived. My office, 8 a.m. Monday. Come prepared to explain yourself. I stared at the message, ice forming in my veins. She knew, somehow, she knew exactly what I'd done. The confrontation I'd been building toward was no longer a matter of if, but when. And Elaine had just seized control of the timing. The weekend passed, in a blur of preparation and anxiety. I barely slept, spending hours organizing evidence, rehearsing what I would say, and trying to anticipate Elaine's counterattacks. Lana and I spoke twice, coordinating our approach for the board meeting that would follow my confrontation with Elaine. Peyton came over Sunday night, our earlier argument forgotten in the face of what was coming. You don't have to do this alone, she said, sitting cross-legged on my couch as I paced the living room. I'm not alone. I have Lana and Ryder. You have work allies, she corrected. That's different from having someone who loves you, regardless of what happens tomorrow. I stopped pacing and looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. Her eyes were tired, worried, but unwavering in their support. I'm scared, I admitted, the words catching in my throat. What if this backfires? What if I lose everything I've worked for? Then you start over, she said, simply. With me right beside you. I slept fitfully that night, dreaming of boardrooms that stretched endlessly, and Elaine's face multiplying like a hall of mirrors. I woke at 5 a.m., showered, and dressed with deliberate care, a charcoal suit that made me feel armored, hair pulled back severely, minimal makeup. Today wasn't about looking pretty, it was about looking formidable. The office was quiet when I arrived at 7:30, the early morning light casting long shadows across the empty desks. I used the time to set up in the small conference room where the board would meet at 9 Psi, connecting my laptop to the projector, testing that everything worked. At 7:55, I walked to Elaine's office, my evidence folder tucked under my arm, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the glass walls, I could see her already at her desk, impeccably dressed as always, reviewing documents with the serene confidence of someone who believed themselves untouchable. I knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. Right on time, she said, without looking up. Close the door. I did, then remained standing, refusing the chair she gestured toward. I prefer to stand. Now she looked up, her eyes narrowing slightly. Suit yourself. Would you like to explain why you were in my office Friday night? No point in denying it. I was gathering evidence of your systematic theft of my work and your insider trading with Oscar. If I expected shock or outrage, I was disappointed. Elaine merely leaned back in her chair, studying me with something like curiosity. Bold accusation. Proof? I placed the folder on her desk, but kept my hand on it. Emails, documents, timestamps, enough to convince the board, which meets in an hour. The board, she repeated, a small smile playing at her lips. You think the board will believe a senior manager? Oh, wait. You're not even that yet. Over the COO who's doubled the company's market share. I think they'll believe evidence. And I think they'll be very interested in those stock sales in March. Something flickered in her eyes, the first crack in her composure. You're making a mistake, June. One that will end your career, not just here, but everywhere. No one hires troublemakers. Is that what you told Lana and the others before her? I leaned forward, placing my palms on her desk. Did you really think we wouldn't eventually find each other? Compare notes, realize what you've been doing. She stood abruptly, her chair rolling back to hit the wall. You ungrateful little, she caught herself, visibly regaining control. I made you. Everything you know about this business, you learned from me. No, I said, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. You used me, you used all of us, and now it stops. This isn't a negotiation, she snapped. What do you want? Money? A real promotion? Name it. I want credit for my work. I want you to admit what you've done. And I want you to resign." She laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. "Never going to happen." "Then I'll see you in the boardroom." I turned to leave. June. Her voice stopped me at the door. "Think about what you're doing. Oscar won't let this happen. He needs me." I looked back at her, suddenly seeing not the intimidating figure who had loomed so large in my professional life, but simply a woman cornered by her own deceptions. "Maybe he does, but after the board sees the evidence of your insider trading together, he'll be too busy saving himself to help you." The boardroom was filling up when I arrived. Lana was already there, sitting quietly in a corner, her face a mask of professional calm. Ryder stood by the coffee station, giving me a subtle nod. Oscar entered last, followed by Elaine, both of them radiating confidence that seemed forced around the edges. Diana, the board chairwoman, called the meeting to order. "I understand we have an unscheduled presentation this morning." I stood, feeling every eye in the room on me. "Yes, I have evidence of systematic intellectual property theft within the company, as well as potential securities violations." Oscar's face darkened. "This is ridiculous. We don't have time for—" "Let her speak," Diana interrupted, her gaze sharp. "Serious allegations deserve a hearing." I connected my laptop to the projector and began. With each slide, each email, each comparison of my original work to Elaine's claimed versions, the room grew more tense. When I reached the March stock sales and the internal projections that had been hidden from investors, the silence became absolute. "This is absurd," Elaine finally said, her voice tight. "These emails could be doctored. This is clearly a vindictive attempt by a junior employee who's angry about—" "They're not doctored," Lana interrupted, standing. "I have copies of the same emails, obtained separately." "As do I," came another voice. Ryder stood, holding up a flash drive. "Different access point, same evidence." Elaine's face went rigid. She turned to Oscar, clearly expecting him to intervene. But he was staring at the projection screen, the color draining from his face. "I think," Diana said into the silence, "we need to continue this discussion without Ms. May and Mr. Murray present. Would you both please step outside while the board confers?" Elaine stood, her movements stiff. "This isn't over," she said, looking directly at me. I met her gaze steadily. "Yes, it is." As she walked out, shoulders back, head high even in defeat, I felt no triumph, only a hollow relief that the truth was finally exposed. Diana turned to me after they left. "That was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I've seen in 30 years of business." "Sometimes they're the same thing," I said. She almost smiled. "Indeed. Now tell us everything. From the beginning." I took a deep breath and started again, my voice stronger with each word. The weight I'd carried for months was lifting, replaced by something that felt surprisingly like freedom. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, my voice was hoarse, my confidence wavering under the relentless questioning. But the evidence spoke for itself. Undeniable, damning, impossible to explain away. When I finally emerged, the office was buzzing with whispers. Elaine and Oscar had been escorted from the building by security, their personal items to be packed and delivered later. The official story was pending investigation into ethical violations. But the truth raced through the company's gossip channels at light speed. Lana caught up with me at the elevator. "Diana wants to see you tomorrow morning, just you." "What about you?" "And Ryder. We've had our meetings already." She smiled, a genuine expression I'd never seen from her before. "I think you'll be pleased with the outcome." I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow, drained of the anger that had fueled me for weeks. I walked back to my desk in a daze, unsure what to do next. A small crowd had gathered there, colleagues with questions, congratulations, confessions of their own negative experiences with Elaine. I answered mechanically, still processing the morning's events. "Give her some space," Ryder finally said, dispersing the onlookers. When we were alone, he leaned against my desk. "How are you really doing?" "I don't know." I admitted. I didn't think beyond this moment. That's understandable. It's been all-consuming. He hesitated. Listen, there's something you should know. Something I couldn't tell you before. My guard instantly rose. What? I was on Elaine's list too. 3 years ago, before you joined. A marketing campaign I developed. She took full credit. When I confronted her, she threatened to fire me for performance issues if I pursued it. I stared at him. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed, he said simply. I gave up. I let her win. You didn't. The revelation shifted something in me, not just how I saw Ryder, but how I saw myself. I hadn't just fought for my work. I'd fought for everyone who couldn't or didn't. That night, I met Peyton for dinner, bringing a bottle of champagne I couldn't really afford. To justice, she said, raising her glass. To surviving, I countered. We talked for hours, not just about Elaine and the fallout, but about everything I'd been too preoccupied to discuss in recent weeks. Peyton's new project at the gallery, her brother's engagement, the trip we'd been planning before my work consumed me. So what happens now? She asked as we walked back to my apartment. I meet with Diana tomorrow. Beyond that, I shrugged. I honestly don't know. Are you afraid? I considered the question carefully. No, I realized. For the first time in months, I'm not afraid. The next morning, Diana was waiting in what had been Oscar's office. The view of the city spread out behind her. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. The board has voted to terminate both Elaine and Oscar. The SEC has been notified about the stock sales. She gestured for me to sit. We're facing a significant leadership vacuum. I nodded, unsure where this was going. We need someone to take over the marketing department immediately. Someone who understands the projects in progress, who has demonstrated both creativity and integrity. She fixed me with a penetrating look. I'm offering you the position of acting director of marketing. My breath caught. That's a significant promotion. Yes, it is. Too significant, some might say, for someone your age, with your experience level. Her expression was unreadable, which is why it's temporary. 6 months. Prove yourself, and we'll make it permanent. Fail, and we'll bring someone else in. It was both an incredible opportunity and a potential setup for failure. The department was in chaos, morale at rock bottom. Taking over now meant inheriting all of Elaine's problems without her connections or experience. I have conditions, I heard myself say. Diana's eyebrows rose. I'm listening. First, I want Lana transferred back to her original team with a promotion to team lead. Second, I want a full audit of all projects from the past 2 years, with proper credit restored to the actual creators. And third, I took a deep breath. I want a seat at the table when you discuss the company's ethical guidelines moving forward. I expected resistance, maybe even withdrawal of the offer. Instead, Diana smiled. A small, approving expression. Done, done, and done. Anything else? Yes. I want it in writing that I report directly to you, not to whoever replaces Oscar. She nodded. Smart, I was hoping you'd say that. She slid a folder across the desk. The paperwork is already prepared. Take the day to think about it. I didn't need a day. I signed immediately, my signature firm and decisive, in a way it hadn't been before all this began. As I left Oscar's, now Diana's office, I passed the conference room, where everything had come to a head. Through the glass, I could see a maintenance worker removing Elaine's name plaque from the wall. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on the promotion. Enjoy it while it lasts. This isn't over. I should have felt frightened. Instead, I felt a strange calm. Whoever it was, Elaine or Oscar, or someone else entirely, they were missing the point. They still thought this was about power, about winning and losing. I deleted the message without responding and walked to what would now be my office. On the desk sat the silver pen Elaine had given me, retrieved from my old workspace. Ambition is the path to success. I picked it up, feeling its weight one last time, then dropped it into the trash. Success wasn't about ambition. It was about creation, integrity, and the courage to stand your ground when the world tried to move you. Elaine had taught me that lesson, just not in the way she intended.